Welcome to Dr. Ziegler Weighs In. I'm Zachary Ziegler, professor of exercise physiology and fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine. I've authored 2 books on weight loss and published dozens of research articles. I'm here to cut through the noise and give you evidence-based insights you can actually use. Now let's dive into the science. All right, welcome back. Thank you for listening. In today's episode, we're going to talk about high fructose corn syrup and diet soda. Often there's this debate on does diet soda, can it help you lose weight? Is it going to cause you to eat more food, cause you to gain weight? And we're going to try to settle that. Before we do that, I'm going to start with some of the weekly science news. I chose an article that just came out in the Journal of International Society of Sports Medicine. And this article looked at the potential effects of a pre-workout, right? Pre-workouts are kind of all the craze. A pre-workout compared to a control group that just consumed some carbohydrates. So let's talk about the article. So article just came out. They compared the effects of this pre-workout that consisted of some of the main ingredients in most of our pre-workouts today. Let me list what some of them are. So it included some of the branched chain amino acids. And so these branched chain amino acids, supposedly what makes them ergogenic. And so when we say ergogenic, we're saying that it's going to help you become bigger, faster, stronger, lose weight, performance benefit, that kind of thing, is that they're metabolized in skeletal muscle compared to other amino acids that go to the liver first. So the theory is maybe because they're metabolized in skeletal muscle, maybe they'll help with some sort of performance. So this pre-workout, it had these branched chain amino acids. It had L-arginine and L-citrulline. Both L-arginine and L-citrulline are in most pre-workouts because they serve as a precursor to nitric oxide. Nitric oxide causes the vessels to dilate, increases blood flow to the muscle, and so theoretically, again, that will help performance. And then it had 400 milligrams of caffeine in this pre-workout, so it's kind of a lot. Interesting to note, the pre-workout they used in this study did not have creatine in it, and so they didn't look at any creatine. So they compared the effects of consuming that pre-workout every day compared to a group that consumed just a placebo that had the same amount of calories as the pre-workout did, but it was all in the form of carbohydrate. So they had these individuals train for, let's see, I believe it was 6 weeks, trained for 6 weeks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they looked at outcomes of body composition changes, muscle and fat mass, fat-free mass, that kind of thing. They looked at muscle thickness. They looked at, in a lot of measures of muscular power, muscular strength, and things of that nature. And at the end of the study, now both groups saw improvements. Both groups lost some weight, got stronger, that kind of thing. But at the end of the study, they found that there was no difference between the group that consumed the pre-workout versus the group that consumed just the carbohydrate supplement. The researchers note, because their hypothesis was that the group consuming the pre-workout would see better performance metrics and better body composition changes. And actually, I should note, the only difference is that the group that took the pre-workout, they did see greater reductions in waist circumference compared to the control group. But what the researchers were kind of hypothesizing is that the individuals in the study, they were chronic caffeine users to begin with. And there is some data, this isn't all consistent, but there is some data to suggest if you use caffeine every single day, its ergogenic effects. And so when you consume it before workouts, its ability to promote this bigger, faster, stronger weight loss, that kind of thing, it may wear off. And so that's kind of what the research suggested. And so I don't know, we'll have an episode dedicated to pre-workouts down the road. But this study suggests that it may not be worth the money that we're putting into it. All right, let's get into the topic today. This is a topic I'm excited to discuss. I remember I was at this family function, and I was consuming a Diet Mountain Dew. And I always joke, Diet Mountain Dew is like the nectar of the gods. It's delicious. And so I was consuming this Diet Mountain Dew, and somebody was consuming a regular soda, and I could care less. Some people in nutrition like to analyze everything that people consume. I don't care what they're going to eat. But this individual said to me, and maybe many listeners will believe what this individual said. They said, Zach, you would be way better off consuming the regular stuff right? Non-diet versus that diet soda, and it's going to kill you and make you fat and all this kind of stuff. And I just looked at the person and didn't say anything. But this person who happened to say this is type 2 diabetic, morbidly obese, on multiple medications, and so whatever. If they want to lecture me on drinking a diet soda, that's fine. But a lot of people believe that notion that diet soda is so worse than drinking regular soda. So I kind of want to talk about this. Now we're going to look at this from the lens of just obesity, and that's important. Because we don't have time to get into all the literature on all the other health claims, lack of claims, negative things that could be linked to it. And so we're going to look through this through the lens of obesity. I think the best way to do it, though, is we need to start by just talking about regular soda consumption. The number one source of added sugar consumption in our country for all ages come from sugar-sweetened beverages. We consume more calories today, about 300 more calories today than we did in the 70s and 80s. Almost all of those calories come in the form of sugar-sweetened beverages. So the first thing to note is if you're trying to lose weight and control weight, in my opinion, one of the easiest things is stop drinking your calories. Just cut it out. Whether you go to water or is what we're going to talk about today to diet, just remove those calories. There is enough data that is not controversial to say that those that drink more soda are more likely to gain weight, that I don't feel like I need to spend the time on it. And I hope that makes sense what I just said. There's enough data to say, yes, if you're a chronic soda drinker, now I'm not talking about diet right now, I mean full sugar soda drinker, there's enough evidence to say, yes, it's increasing risk for obesity, that I don't feel like we need to spend much more time on that. I want to talk about, though, still in relation to sugar, or to regular soda, is high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup, in the nutrition field, what we do is we need a villain. And I don't know why, but people who are nutrition zealots, they always have to have a villain. The villain used to be high fructose corn syrup. Today, the villain seems to be gluten. We've always had these villains. Fructose by itself was a villain for a while. And so it's just the way that these nutrition zealots, and when I say nutrition zealots, these are people who nutrition has become their religion. And high fructose corn syrup used to be their villain. And I want to just give a little bit of history on high fructose corn syrup. Most people, when they're talking about high fructose corn syrup being so bad for you, if you ask them what it is, they have no idea what it is. And so let's talk about high fructose corn syrup and obesity. So first of all, we started using high fructose corn syrup in the 60s. And we started to do that because, one, it was easy to handle. It was in a liquid form, which made that very simple. For baking good, it enhances moisture in the browning of these baked goods. Now, somebody who enjoys baked goods, I like that browning. I like that moisture. And so producers, they don't mind using that because consumers enjoy it. It's very stable in acidic foods such as soft drinks. And then it's from an abundant source, corn, right? We subsidize corn, and so it's a very abundant source. And so in the 60s, we started to replace sucrose. Now, sucrose is just table sugar. That's what we used to sweeten everything with. We started to replace sucrose with the use of high fructose corn syrup. About 1999 is when use of high fructose corn syrup started to kind of go down a little bit. A lot of people in the public started to fear how much high fructose corn syrup we were consuming. Really, it was an uncontroversial topic until some researchers, the lead researcher, his last name I believe is Bray, and he published a paper with his colleagues where they interposed the obesity rate over time, so obesity rates from the 60s to early 2000s, and in the same graph, he put high fructose corn syrup consumption on that graph. And if you were to look at this graph, there is a definite correlation, an association between obesity rates in the 80s is really where it took off, and high fructose corn syrup. And so because of this association, people started to run with this and they started to infer causation. And that's what we do all the time. We shouldn't, but that's what we do. It's interesting, Bray and his colleagues who published this paper, they said that that paper was supposed to be, quote, provocative and stir up scientific debate, end quote. Meaning that paper, as good scientists know, is not cause and effect. It's an interesting association that we should study. Well, it kind of got out of hand, and we started to say that high fructose corn syrup is our new villain. Well, if we look at the difference between high fructose corn syrup and sucrose from a composition and biochemical point of view, it's not really different. Sucrose, again, that's our table sugar, is about a 50% fructose and 50% glucose. That's the composition of sucrose. High fructose corn syrup, now there's different kinds of high fructose corn syrup, but on average is about 55% fructose and 42% glucose. So I need you to know the fear of those who are fearing high fructose corn syrup is that 5% extra fructose than sucrose has. So you may be asking, we won't go into a ton of the detail, well, what's the problem with fructose? Well, I don't think there's a problem with fructose, but those that do, fructose is metabolized in the liver to be converted over to glucose. Well, there's a process, de novo lipogenesis, which is the conversion of carbohydrates to fat, and that takes place primarily in the liver. So some may believe that fructose or that extra fructose in high fructose corn syrup will be sent to the liver and have an increased propensity to then be turned into fat. That's kind of some of the theories here. Now, there's other things that we'll get into, but that's one of the supposed issues. Okay. So, but I need you to start by understanding. Okay, what is high fructose corn syrup? It is it's a sugar, so to speak, has 5% more fructose in it than table sugar. That's what everybody was up in arms with. Now, the original studies, when you're a researcher and you do a study, often you want to see something. And so you take things to extremes. And the problem with that is that it's not applicable in real life settings. A lot of the data, original data looking at high fructose corn syrup and its possible effects on weight or on food intake, they give people 25 to 60% of all of their calories as pure high fructose corn syrup. That amount exceeds the 95th percentile intake of 9% of calories from high fructose corn syrup, meaning they're giving people in these studies the amount of high fructose corn syrup that nobody really consumes. And then, of course, they have bad things take place, and they say, oh, my goodness, this high fructose corn syrup is the villain. But that's not how the average American is consuming their high fructose corn syrup. So there's problems there. One of the other fears with high fructose corn syrup, fructose is the sweetest monosaccharide out of all of them. So fructose is very sweet, and the fear is if you consume sweet things, it may provoke a desire to consume more sweet things, and then you overeat. When you look at randomized controlled trials giving people amounts of high fructose corn syrup that's kind of more of in a normal range, we don't see that. One study I'll present right here, author's name is Stanhope, and he did just that. He gave individuals an added amount of beverages in the form of high fructose corn syrup or sucrose. And the ultimate purpose of this was to see, are they going to eat more food, and is there going to be a difference when you give them high fructose corn syrup versus sucrose on different hormonal effects. So when you consume a lot of sugar, that sugar is going to provoke insulin to be released. There's going to be changes in glucose, obviously, and other hormonal changes that affect hunger and eating intake. So the questions that this author had is high fructose corn syrup going to provoke those hormonal responses differently than sucrose? So they gave the same amount of sucrose, high fructose corn syrup, and they measured glucose. They measured insulin. There's no differences in glucose and insulin. They measured leptin. Leptin is what we call an adipokine. So leptin is a hormone that's released from your fat cells, and it plays a very important role on food intake. And there's no difference in leptin. And they looked at ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hormone that's released from your gut. Again, plays an important role in food intake. And there's no difference in ghrelin. The evidence, I'm going to read from the conclusion of the study. Sucrose and high fructose corn syrup. So remember, sucrose is table sugar. That's what we used to, and now we kind of gone back to it, but that's what we used to sweeten our soda with and that kind of thing. So sucrose and high fructose corn syrup do not have substantially different short-term endocrine metabolic effects. It doesn't. It doesn't really affect the body differently. This topic of high fructose corn syrup and is it going to be causing all these issues? We don't have any good evidence saying that high fructose corn syrup is any worse than sucrose. multiple studies from a variety of research laboratories, as well as proceedings from two major research symposia on nutritive sweeteners, have all uniformly concluded that based on the current science, there is no unique association between high fructose corn syrup and obesity. The American Medical Association has studied this issue for over a year, and they concluded, quote, that high fructose corn syrup does not appear to contribute more to obesity than other caloric sweeteners. The American Dietetics Association studied the topic, and they concluded with, quote, no persuasive evidence supports the claim that high fructose corn syrup is a unique contributor of obesity. Now, we have to understand what I'm saying here. Often I'll give this lecture to my students and they say, oh man, high fructose corn syrup is good for you. I never said that. Consuming lots of high fructose corn syrup is not good for you. Just like consuming a lot of sucrose is not good for you. Consuming a lot of these sugars is very bad for you, and it will contribute to obesity. What I'm saying is, we in our field love to find a villain, such as high fructose corn syrup, and say that it is so much worse than sucrose, and we don't have evidence for that. I think the best way to view this, Harvey Anderson, he's the editor, or was the editor, of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. In the nutrition field, that is the journal. And I love the way that he posed this question. So he was speaking to a group of people that were really saying, hey, high fructose corn syrup has driven our obesity rates through the roof. This is what he said. Had the hypothesis been phrased in the converse, namely that replacing high fructose corn syrup with sucrose in beverages would be seen as a solution to the obesity epidemic, its merit would have been seen more clearly. Put simply, a proposal that a return to sucrose containing beverages would be a credible source to reduce the obesity epidemic would be met with outright dismissal. You can't have it both ways. If somebody is saying the reason we've gotten so big is we have replaced sucrose with high fructose corn syrup, if you're going to make that claim, you must also then make the claim. All we have to do then is go back to sucrose and we'll lose all this weight that we gained as a society. Nobody thinks that that's the case. So when we go into this discussion of diet soda versus regular soda, we have to start there. Let me kind of review. Drinking a lot of regular soda, sugar-sweetened beverages, yes, you're going to increase obesity. It's increasing the risk for obesity and other negative health effects, but we're going to focus on weight. It's not because of the high fructose corn syrup per se. Well, I should probably say that differently. Meaning the high fructose corn syrup, again, is not uniquely provoking it, more so than just table sugar. So consuming a lot of sucrose, consuming a lot of high fructose corn syrup, whatever that form of sugar, it's bad for you. It's going to increase risk for obesity. So then we say, okay, what about diet sodas? Can I then replace my regular soda if I'm a soda drinker and say I'm going to start drinking diet soda? Would that be a viable way to lose weight? That's kind of where we're going to go now. So let's go back to this idea that we love to do in the nutritional sciences. And you got to understand, and we're going to have an episode on this, nutrition research is some of the worst research that is out there. It really is. I'll do this activity in a class where I'll say, okay, students, I'm going to list a food and I want you to raise your hand if you think that that food is bad for you. And I'll go down things from eggs, dairy products, products containing high cholesterol, seed oils, different kinds of fat. And it's interesting because nobody's agreeing on all these topics. And then I ask them, where did you get your opinions on if a food is good or bad for you? And they all say, well, a research study said it. I can find any research study to prove both sides of an argument. And so we have to be selective in the research that we look at to ensure that they're randomized controlled trials and that they're actually giving subjects food to eat, watching them eat it. There's problems. So I want you to note that. So if we look at data, a lot of the research on artificial sweeteners and obesity, if we look at correlational data, there is a lot of correlational data showing that those that say they drink more diet soda have higher BMI rates. That correlational data is there. Now remember, correlation is not causation. And in fact, when you look at data, so I'm looking on my screen at a figure. On the x-axis, we have that obesity, the x-axis, we have the years from 1980s until this is one goes until about 2010. And we look at the obesity rate and it goes up. And then they also plot the percent of the population consuming artificial sweeteners, it also goes up. Meaning we do have a correlation between artificial sweeteners and obesity rates. But it's interesting. Um, if you look at some of these individuals that are take Diet Coke. Diet Coke used to be, the mom drink. Maybe it still is. I don't know. My mom lived off Diet Coke. But if you take some of these people, they go to McDonald's and they'll get 2 Big Macs, 2 extra large fries, a shake, and then a gallon drum of Diet Coke, as if the Diet Coke matters at that point. And then, yes, the person drinking Diet Coke also gains weight, and we say, oh, it's the diet soda, as if it's not the 2 Big Macs, the fries, and that kind of thing. And so correlation's not causation. When we look at data that are randomized controlled trials, where we do an intervention, it's a true experiment, there's zero data to support that. None. If diet soda were to provoke weight gain, we have to say, what's the mechanism? I've had students before when I give this presentation, and sometimes they get, again, I don't know why. It seems like if you want to start a fight with somebody, let me say this differently. If you want to avoid a fight, don't talk about religion and politics, but also don't talk about their nutritional preferences. I don't know why we hold those so close as if they're part of who you are. But I've given this type of presentation, some nutrition courses, and where I'm going to go on and say diet soda from an obesity standpoint is not something that will provoke weight gain. They'll say, well, what about all those hidden calories? And I still remember the student saying this, and I had no idea what she was talking about. I said, hidden calories? What do you mean? And so let's explain what we mean here with these artificial sweeteners. Now, we have developed a lot of these artificial sweeteners. There are some of them that do contain a very small caloric content. If you're a diet soda drinker, or at least if you look at labels, you probably notice some diet sodas, if you look on the back, it says 0 calories. And there are some where it says, especially if there's multiple servings in a container, say it's a 20-ounce bottle. If you drink the whole bottle, which is 2 servings, it says, oh, that's 5 calories. So some of them do have a caloric content, but the thing is, the sweetener is so sweet that the amount of it that needs to be used is so small that that caloric content is negligible. Now, the newer sweeteners that we have, they do not contain calories. And so you need to understand that some of these sweeteners, yes, they may contain a certain amount of calories, but again, we're talking about maybe 5 calories for 20 ounces. That's not driving up your obesity rates, I promise you. Some of the other ones, the new zero lines that are always coming out, Coke Zero and all this zero, well, they don't contain calories. And so you can't say that that's driving the obesity epidemic. So then you have to say, well, what is it? The main theory kind of goes back to what we were saying with high fructose corn syrup is, all right, well, maybe it's making you, because it is very sweet, it's making you want to eat more sweet foods. And then you're eating more sweet foods, and that's driving up your obesity rates. That's the theory. When we look at the evidence, we don't see it. So let's look at a couple studies. So here's one study I'm looking at. Researchers asked this same question. They said, okay, we're going to give subjects same amount of volume of a liquid. One is going to be sweetened with, sucrose, and the other one's going to be sweetened with, in research they call them non-nutritive sweeteners. Okay, so it's like a diet soda in essence. And they just wanted to see, okay, between the groups, is the group that's given this diet drink, are they going to start to eat more sweet food? And then they watched what they ate, they measured what they ate, and the group that was given sucrose, it's important to know when they added sucrose to their diet, so that's like giving them a diet soda, they did not reduce food intake in any other area of their diet, meaning they added, say, 500, 600, 700 calories worth of soda, and the people still ate the same amount of food that they would have eaten. The soda doesn't fill you up is what I'm trying to get at. That's one of the issues. You have all these empty calories. It's really high in sugar, which is going to promote obesity, and you're still going to be eating the same food you would have eaten. The other group, which I'm really focusing on, the group that was then given the artificial sweetener, the diet drink, they gave them that drink, and they didn't subconsciously eat any other food. It's not like it drove up how they wanted more sweets, and so they ate more sweets. That didn't happen. And they actually did this for 10 weeks. And the group given the diet drink, they lost weight. The group given the sucrose drink, they gained weight. And when I teach this to my students, I'm shocked that they're shocked. They said, what do you mean? The group that had the diet soda lost weight? I'm like, well, yeah, they didn't have any calories. And the group that was given the caloric beverage, of course, they gained weight. They had calories. Like, I don't know why this is so shocking. They also measured some health metrics. The group that was given the diet drink also saw systolic and diastolic blood pressure significantly reduce as well. The fact of the matter is, we don't have evidence that diet soda will promote weight gain. All of the evidence from randomized controlled trials suggests completely the opposite. Let me read you a conclusion from a review paper written on this topic. They said, quote, based on studies conducted so far, it can be assumed that replacing sucrose sweetened food, so again, we're talking about the full sugar stuff, with products containing non-nutritive sweeteners, that's our diet drinks, could be an effective nutritional intervention to reduce excessive body weight and prevent overweight and obesity. The beneficial effects of non-nutritive sweetener use on body weight is primarily due to a reduction in dietary energy intake. Again, meaning in my mind, I look at this as a duh stuff, meaning if you're used to consuming regular soda, let's say you consume 500 calories a day of regular soda, and now I give you the diet soda, I don't know why it shocks people that that could be a good tool to lose weight. And this review paper concluded that it can. Here's the interesting thing. There's a lot of research saying, okay, well, let's take people that are chronic soda drinkers. Now, I'm saying soda. Maybe it's not soda. Maybe it's sports drinks, which are full of sugar too. So if you take people who are individuals who chronically drink a lot of their calories in the form of sugar-sweetened beverages, and if you take those individuals and then you randomly assign them and say, well, I'm going to take them and either have them drink only water or only diet soda, the data uniformly shows that those who start to drink diet soda lose more weight than those that are assigned to the water group. And again, I say this in my classes, students get so mad. I'm just reporting what the data suggests. But then I tell my students, as I'm going to tell you as you're sitting there maybe thinking, well, that's nonsense. Let's think about the why. It comes back to psychology. There is no special ingredients in diet soda to help you lose weight. And I'm not saying that starting to drink more diet soda will help you lose weight. It won't do that. But if you're somebody who chronically drinks their calories, that's what we have to view that through this lens. You're someone that you drink a lot of sugary beverages. There's a friend of mine, I have to be careful saying names. I've never know who's going to listen. I'll just say a friend of mine who drinks, his whole life has drank tons of soda. And I still remember this friend being like, man, I got to start drinking more water. And of course I say, you should drink more water. But what happens is, then he quits drinking the soda and he goes to water, and two things happen. One, he's addicted to caffeine. Now, he may not know it, but he is. And so as he moves over to soda, he doesn't feel well. His head hurts. He's really foggy in the way he's thinking. And then two, he was used to having something palatable, meaning the soda tasted good. And then he went to water and it was very bland. And so every single time he did this, he'd say, forget this. Okay, I'm going to go back to drinking just my regular soda. In the studies that compare water to diet soda, what they find is people that switch from regular soda to diet, they still have the caffeine and they still have some taste. And that increases adherence. And it's the increased adherence that leads to more weight loss. The people that just switch over to the water group, and obviously I think we all agree, we want people to drink more water. That's the ultimate objective. But when you switch over to the water group, because it lacks the caffeine and the taste, people end up quitting that. So sometimes I think in these interventions that we do with people, baby steps is important. If you drink a lot of sugar sweetened beverages, maybe it would be beneficial to go to diet. And then, yeah, let's increase more water consumption. Obviously, we should do that. But as I get you over to diet, you're much more likely to adhere to it, and we removed all those calories. I do want to make my point here, though, and so a couple more things here. 2014 meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials. This is the highest level of evidence that you can get. They concluded, quote, on the basis of the available scientific literature, substituting low-calorie sweetener options, now low-calorie sweetener options, again, would be our diet soda, for their regular calorie versions results in weight loss and may be a useful dietary tool, to improve compliance with weight loss or weight maintenance plans. So again, we're increasing compliance. It may help you lose weight. 2016 meta-analysis said, low energy sweeteners, again, that's our diet drink, do not appear to increase energy intake, meaning There's no good data to say, oh, you're going to drink diet, now you can't stop eating candy. It says low energy sweeteners do not appear to increase energy intake, and in human intervention studies tend to lead to a decreased body weight, even compared with the consumption of water. So, really, what's the take home message here? So, if you don't drink diet, or if you don't drink soda at all and you don't drink diet, well, then there's no reason to change what you're doing, right? I mean, keep doing what you're doing. But if you're someone who drinks soda all the time, regular soda, hands down, there's no doubt in my mind that by switching over to diet, it would be a benefit to you. You are decreasing the calories that you're consuming, you're decreasing the amount of sugar that's being consumed, and you're increasing the ability to adhere to this change. Um, People that will say that regular soda is way better than diet soda, I don't have a clue what they mean by that. It's honestly one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. There is so much evidence showing regular soda, all those calories, all that sugar is going to increase your weight. It's going to increase risk for diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. Like, we know that. In correlational studies, which is bad research, in rats where you give them 5 times the amount that a human would consume, we might see an association there. That's not the same level of evidence. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you for listening. Subscribe, share this podcast with anybody who you think may be interested, and have a good day.